Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail, the realm where the shadows whisper ancient secrets and nightmares come to life. I am your guide through the darkness, and on this channel, we delve into the spine-chilling world of Wendigo horror stories that will send shivers down your spine. First story. This story was shared by you/Ty_pod. My boyfriend is telling me to come outside, he isn't there. My boyfriend works late hours, and when I know he's on his way to my house, I'll sit and wait for him in the kitchen to greet him. The main door is in front of me while the back porch one is behind me. He tends to come through that one so my dog doesn't bark. He called me a few minutes ago and said he just left work and he's on his way, so I did my normal and sat at the kitchen table scrolling on my phone until I got the "him outside" text. After a few minutes of scrolling, I heard his voice. The only light outside of my house was the porch light, so I look out of the kitchen window and nobody's there. "Baby, come outside." Normally his voice is reassuring and welcoming, but I had a terrible feeling and decided to call his cell phone. His phone is a track phone that he buys service for, so sometimes it simply rings twice, which is what it did every time I called. Eventually, I gave up and stepped into the back porch to look outside. Maybe his phone died and he needed me to unlock the door for him. I could feel my heart drop when I remembered the door was unlocked. I start to text him asking him to answer his phone, but while I'm doing this the voice turns from a gentle tone to an angry one. It yelled my full name and told me to come outside. My boyfriend never calls me by my full name, and at this point I'm starting to feel scared. I looked outside and it now knows that I'm not in the kitchen and that I looked out of the back porch window. I call him again. After what felt like hours he answered in a concerned way, apologizing because his phone was on vibrate as well as it not working. "Why are you telling me to come outside?" Those were the first words I said. There was an immediate silence over the line. "What do you mean?" "I'm just now on your road." He sounded worried, but I could tell he thought I was pranking him. The voice was getting angrier by the second. It cussed at me and eventually started banging on the door. It was so loud that even my boyfriend could hear it through the phone. I heard the car speed up, then the sound of gravel from him pulling into my driveway. I finally mustered up the courage to move the curtain and see if there was really anyone there. There was nothing there, but I could see him running up the stairs to get to me. Once he got in the voice and the banging came to a complete stop. I stood shaken while he looked around my yard only to see a deer running away on its hind legs, just for the front two to hit the ground in front of it as it went into the nearby woods. We didn't sleep much that night, and eventually we plan on moving somewhere that's closer to the city as my house is out of the way from any other people. Second story. This story was shared by you/Larrickson. Something's eating my goddamn chickens. The morning I realized something was amiss with my chickens started like any other, with the sun lazily crawling up the sky over Blackfeather. I shuffled outside, coffee in hand, still half asleep, dreaming about the omelet I'd whip up with fresh eggs. But as I neared the chicken coop, something felt off. It was too quiet, like the chickens had all decided to play a game of hide and seek, and I was it. Reaching the coop, my eyes widened in disbelief. Several of my prized chickens were missing. No feathers, no signs of a struggle, just an eerie silence. I scratched my head, looking around as if the missing chickens would just waltz back into the coop. "Those darn foxes," I grumbled, though part of me wondered if these foxes had suddenly attended ninja school, given how stealthily they must have operated. Determined to safeguard the rest of my feathered family, I made my way to the local store. Mr. Henderson's shop was an Aladdin's cave of everything you never thought you needed. Wind chimes that supposedly summoned fair weather, a hat that claimed to repel mosquitoes, and amidst all this, anti-fox gadgets. I explained my predicament to Mr. Henderson, who looked at me over his thick glasses with a nod that said, "Say no more." He disappeared into the labyrinthine aisles of his shop and emerged with an armful of items that looked like they belonged in a 50s sci-fi movie. "There you go, Jedediah. This ultrasonic thingamajig, foxes hate the sound it makes. And this spray, smells like lion's breath. Foxes'll think twice before messing with your chickens," he exclaimed with a wink. That evening, I set up Mr. Henderson's arsenal around the coop. The ultrasonic device looked like a miniature UFO and emitted a sound that I couldn't hear but apparently was the equivalent of nails on a chalkboard for foxes. The spray smelled like a mix of Jim's socks and garlic, and I nearly choked trying to spray it around. Standing back, I admired my handiwork with a sense of accomplishment. "Take that, you sneaky bastards," I said to myself, feeling pretty smug. That night, I was jolted awake by a cacophony of beeps and buzzes. Rubbing the sleep from my eyes, I cracked a smile, thinking of my high-tech fox deterrents doing their job. "Run away, you sneaky critters," I mumbled, picturing a horde of confused foxes scampering into the night. With that comforting thought, I drifted back to sleep, a grin still plastered on my face. The morning sun brought joy to my heart. I was sure that my cute, feathered friends were clucking cheerfully, awaiting our morning feeding routine. As I made my way to the coop, coffee in hand, I noticed the silence again. It was different this time, heavier, as if laced with a foreboding I couldn't shake off. Reaching the coop, my heart stopped. More chickens were missing, even more than the day before. My eyes widened in horror as I saw the remnants of my fox-proof setup. The ultrasonic device was smashed to bits, looking like it had been stomped on by an angry giant. The spray can was twisted and torn open, its pungent contents seeping into the ground. But it was the tracks that sent a chill down my spine. They were unlike any animal prints I'd seen before, large, with sharp claw marks that seemed to gouge deep into the earth. They circled the coop, like whatever it was had been stalking my chickens, waiting for the right moment to strike. Trembling, I continued my inspection around the coop. That's when I found it, the most horrifying sight I'd ever laid eyes on. Behind the coop, in the shadows, lay the remains of several chickens. They weren't just dead, they were obliterated, torn apart with such ferocity that it looked like the work of a madman rather than an animal. Feathers were strewn about, and the ground was soaked in a macabre painting of blood and gore. Standing there, amidst the carnage, the reality of the situation hit me. This wasn't the work of foxes or any other typical predator. Something much more sinister was at play here, something beyond my wildest imaginations. A sense of dread washed over me, the kind that sits heavy in your stomach, as I realized that I was dealing with a creature of nightmares, lurking in the shadows of Blackfeather. As I stood amidst the feathery aftermath, a thought struck me like a bolt of lightning. Maybe my high-tech gizmos didn't scare the foxes away. Maybe they just ticked off whatever's been dining on my chickens. It was a eureka moment, albeit a terrifying one. The idea that I had inadvertently angered a creature unknown and clearly dangerous was both ludicrous and oddly comedic in its irony. With a mix of dread and a bizarre sense of curiosity, I headed back to Mr. Henderson's shop. The bell above the door jingled merrily as I stepped in, a stark contrast to my grim determination. "Mr. Henderson, I need something stronger." "My chicken thief isn't a fox," I declared. The shopkeeper peered at me over his glasses, a twinkle of mischief in his eyes. "Aha, something more substantial, he said, rubbing his hands together. He led me through the labyrinth of aisles, each filled with more bizarre items than the last. We passed a shelf of garlic necklaces, for vampires, he assured me, a rack of silver bullets, werewolves, obviously, and a box of what looked suspiciously like glitter bombs. He didn't explain those. Finally, we reached the back of the shop where the real, heavy artillery was stored. Mr. Henderson presented me with an assortment of gadgets and gizmos that looked like they'd been pulled straight out of a sci-fi comic book. There was a canister that supposedly emitted a sound only evil spirits could hear, a net made of a material he claimed was alien technology, and a bottle of liquid he cheerfully described as essence of Bigfoot. Armed with my new arsenal of the absurd, I headed back to the farm, feeling like a character in a B-grade monster movie. Setting up these new defenses was an adventure in itself. The evil spirit sound emitter required an engineering degree to assemble, the alien net kept sticking to itself and everything else, and the Bigfoot essence, well, let's just say I hoped Bigfoot had a better sense of smell than I did. By the time I was done, my farm looked like a set from a low-budget sci-fi horror flick. I stood back, hands on hips, admiring the ridiculousness of it all. "All right, you mysterious chicken-eating monstrosity," I muttered with a grin, "let's see you get past this." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over my farm, I sat in my living room with a peculiar mix of dread and anticipation. My trusty double-barreled shotgun lay across my lap, its familiar weight a small comfort. Beside me, my laptop was open to the latest episode of that Korean drama everyone seemed to be talking about, a tale of love, betrayal, and dramatic misunderstandings. I'd found myself oddly hooked on it, the complex plot a welcome distraction from the chaos of my current predicament. As I meticulously cleaned my shotgun, ensuring it was in perfect working order, I divided my attention between the screen and the occasional strange sounds emanating from outside. The actors on the screen were in the midst of a particularly emotional scene, their voices rising and falling in dramatic crescendos. Yet, even their passionate dialogue couldn't fully drown out the eerie noises of the night or the pounding of my heart, which seemed to beat in rhythm with my growing anxiety. Suddenly, the relative calm of the evening was shattered. The devices and contraptions I had set up around the coop, courtesy of Mr. Henderson's eclectic collection, burst into life. It was a cacophony of electronic beeps, whirs, and otherworldly sounds that would have been comical under any other circumstances. My heart leaped into my throat, and I scrambled to the window, peering out into the darkness that enveloped my farm. The moon hung low in the sky, a pale witness to the night's events, casting ghostly shadows across the yard. That's when I heard it, a howl that cut through the night, a sound so bone-chillingly loud and otherworldly it seemed to resonate with the very air around me. It was almost human in its agony and fury, yet distorted, as if coming from a throat not used to forming words. A shiver ran down my spine, the sound echoing in my ears, a harbinger of something unnatural and terrifying. Adrenaline surged through me, and I grabbed my shotgun, rushing out the door with a mix of fear and resolve. The night air was cool against my skin, a stark contrast to the heat of my racing heart. As I neared the coop, the odd symphony of Mr. Henderson's gadgets filled the air, an absurd soundtrack to the unfolding horror. Then, in an instant, chaos erupted. It was as if the very air around the coop exploded, sending a shower of debris into the night. Wood splintered, nails and wire mesh flew like deadly shrapnel, and, most horrifying of all, the remains of my chickens, feathers, bones, and flesh, rained down around me. The scene was apocalyptic, a tableau of destruction that seemed to defy explanation. I stood there, rooted to the spot in shock and disbelief, covered in the grisly remnants of my flock. The air was thick with the coppery smell of blood, the acrid scent of fear, and the unmistakable odor of death. The coop, once a symbol of my simple, pastoral life, was now a ruin, a testament to the violence and power of the creature that had visited my farm. At that moment, as I stood amidst the devastation, a primal fear gripped me, a fear that went beyond the immediate terror of the attack. It was the realization that I was up against something far beyond my understanding, a creature of nightmares that defied the natural order. My mind raced, trying to comprehend the scale of the threat I faced, even as a deep, instinctual part of me screamed to flee, to escape the horror that had descended upon my once peaceful farm. Out of the corner of my eye, amidst the chaos and the wreckage of the coop, I caught a glimpse of something moving, fast. It was a blur, a shadow that seemed to dart and weave through the night with unnatural speed. My heart raced as I tried to track its movement. The remnants of my once beloved chickens still were falling on the ground beside me. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature stopped. In the pale moonlight, two glowing eyes met mine, burning with an intelligence and ferocity that was almost paralyzing. They were like nothing I had ever seen, a deep, malevolent red, piercing through the darkness straight into my soul. Expectedly, a surge of terror overtook me. My hands, slick with sweat and trembling with fear, lost their grip on my shotgun. It clattered to the ground, discharging with a loud bang that echoed through the night. The sound seemed to enrage the creature further. It let out a monstrous howl, a sound so filled with rage and pain that it felt almost palpable in the air. Panicked, I turned on my heels and ran from my house, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I could hear the creature behind me, its heavy footsteps and guttural snarls a constant reminder of the danger nipping at my heels. I slammed the door shut behind me, my whole body shaking as I scrambled to lock it. Frantically, I moved through the house, barricading every door and window with whatever I could find, chairs, tables, a heavy bookshelf. My mind raced with fear and disbelief. How had my quiet, simple life turned into a scene from a horror movie? Finally, finding no other refuge, I locked myself in the bathroom. My entire body was trembling, my ears straining for any sound of the creature that might have followed me inside. The small, cramped space felt like the only safe haven in a world that had suddenly become alien and threatening. I spent the rest of the night in that bathroom, jumping at every creak and groan of the house. The once familiar sounds now seemed ominous, each one a potential harbinger of the creature's return. The night stretched on endlessly, each minute an eternity of fear and anticipation. I sat there, huddled on the cold tile floor, waiting for dawn to break, praying that the light would bring some semblance of safety and sanity back to my world. As the first light of dawn crept through the cracks of the bathroom window, I mustered the courage to unlock the door. My body was stiff from spending hours on the cold tile floor, my mind still reeling from the terror of the night. I stepped out into the silent house, my senses on high alert, half expecting the creature to leap out from the shadows. Cautiously, I moved from room to room, surveying the aftermath of my frantic barricading. Chairs were upturned, tables pushed against doors, books and knickknacks strewn across the floor in my hasty attempt to fortify my home. Thankfully, it seemed the creature hadn't breached the house. The silence was a small comfort, but it was a comfort nonetheless. I spent the next hour tidying up, returning the furniture to its rightful place, and trying to bring some order back to the chaos. The familiar task was oddly soothing, a slice of normalcy in an otherwise surreal situation. Stepping outside into the scorching midday, I braced myself as I approached the remnants of the chicken coop. The scene was just as gruesome in the daylight. Feathers, wood, and the remains of my chickens were scattered about, a grim reminder of the night's horrors. The coop itself was a mangled wreck, the once sturdy structure now little more than a pile of splinters and twisted wire. As I surveyed the wreckage, I noticed something else. My fence, particularly the part that bordered the dense woods, was utterly destroyed. Huge sections were torn down, the wood splintered and broken as if by tremendous force. It looked like a wild storm had passed through, but I knew better. Whatever had attacked my chickens, whatever had been lurking in the darkness, it had come from the woods and had the strength to tear through solid wood like it was paper. The realization sent a shiver down my spine. The woods, once a place of peace and solitude, now seemed to loom ominously, hiding untold dangers in their shadowy depths. As I stood there, looking at the broken fence and the devastation it enclosed, I knew that this nightmare was far from over. Whatever resided in those woods, it was powerful, malevolent, and now, thanks to my actions, possibly very, very angry. Once again, I found myself trudging back to Mr. Henderson's shop, the events of the previous night replaying in my mind like a bad movie. The bell above the door chimed cheerily as I entered, a stark contrast to my haggard appearance and the grim story I was about to tell. Mr. Henderson was behind the counter, rearranging a display of what looked like antique voodoo dolls. I cleared my throat and launched into the tale of the previous night's horrors. As I spoke, his expression shifted from mild interest to a look of knowing, as if he had been expecting this all along. When I finished, he stared at me for a moment, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Then, without a word, he beckoned me to follow him. We maneuvered through the maze of shelves, past a collection of what I swear were shrunken heads and a rack of garlic that he insisted was extra potent. Eventually, we reached a hidden door, cleverly concealed between two bookshelves filled with dusty tomes. He ushered me down a narrow staircase into a dimly lit basement, the air thick with the smell of incense and old books. The walls were lined with shelves crammed with odd artifacts and ancient-looking weapons. He spoke in hushed tones, "I know what you're up against, Jedediah. And I have just the thing to defeat it." In the center of the room, on a small pedestal, sat a mysterious object shrouded in a scarlet cloth. My heart raced as he approached it with a sort of reverence. With a dramatic flourish, he whisked the cloth away, revealing a plush chicken. For a moment, I was speechless. The plush toy looked absurdly out of place amidst the array of mystical paraphernalia. It was just a regular, cuddly, toy chicken, complete with button eyes and a stitched-on smile. Mr. Henderson, completely unfazed by my bewildered expression, plucked the plush chicken from the pedestal and thrust it into my hands. "This," he said with a straight face, "is your salvation. Place it where your coop used to be. Trust me." I must have stood there gaping like a fish out of water because he soon grew impatient. "Go on," Jedediah. Time's a wasting, he urged, shooing me out of the basement and back through the shop. So there I was, standing outside Mr. Henderson's shop, clutching a plush chicken and feeling like I'd just stepped out of the Twilight Zone. The absurdity of the situation was not lost on me, and despite the gravity of my predicament, I couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of facing down a nightmarish creature with a toy. With a shake of my head, I made my way back to the farm, the plush chicken under my arm, ready to face whatever the night would bring. Following Mr. Henderson's bizarre instructions, I found myself back at the farm, standing where my chicken coop once proudly stood. In my hand, the plush chicken seemed to stare back at me with its button eyes, almost mocking the absurdity of the situation. With a sigh that carried all my doubts, I placed the toy on the ground, right in the center of the wreckage. The day passed in a blur of anticipation and, admittedly, a touch of skepticism. As evening approached, I decided to take no chances. Remembering the previous night's fumble with my shotgun, I came up with a genius solution: duct tape. Yes, I taped the shotgun to my hand, ensuring it would stay put no matter how scared or clumsy I got. I must have looked like a low-budget action hero, armed and slightly ridiculous. To pass the time and perhaps to ease my nerves, I turned to the internet. Sitting in my dimly lit living room, I scoured the web for any mention of chicken-eating monsters. My search was a deep dive into the world of folklore and urban legends, ranging from wer-chickens to ghostly foxes. Each story was more outlandish than the last, and yet, after what I had witnessed, I wasn't in a position to dismiss any of them. As dusk fell, I settled myself by the window, the room dark except for the glow of my laptop screen. The taped shotgun felt heavy in my hand, an absurd but necessary burden. My eyes darted between the screen and the shadowy outdoors, where the plush chicken sat in eerie stillness. The night was quiet, almost too quiet, heightening my sense of unease. Every rustle of wind and distant animal cry made me jump, my grip tightening on my makeshift weapon. There, in the dim light, with my heart thudding in my chest, I waited for the creature, a bizarre sentinel guarding his farm with nothing but a toy chicken and a shotgun taped to his hand. As the night wore on, my initial vigilance began to wane, giving way to doubt. Maybe the creature wouldn't return. Maybe the sight of a plush chicken in the moonlit ruins of its previous feasting ground was too bizarre even for a monster from the depths of folklore. I found myself chuckling at the thought, the tension easing slightly. But then, the stillness of the night was broken. Faint at first, there were noises emanating from the direction of the woods, a strange rustling, unlike the wind through leaves or the scurry of small animals. It grew louder, more deliberate, as if something large was moving through the underbrush, heading toward my farm. My heart started racing again. I focused my gaze on the plush chicken, now just a silhouette against the darkness. And that's when I saw it, the same swift, shadowy movement I had witnessed the previous night. It was back. The creature, shrouded in the darkness of the night, lunged at the toy chicken. It was a blur of motion, almost too fast for the eye to follow. I watched in stunned silence as it viciously tore into the plush toy, ripping it apart with ferocity. For a brief moment, the absurdity of the scene, a nightmarish beast savagely attacking a stuffed animal, almost seemed comical. But then, the creature stopped. It stood still, and the night air was pierced by the most horrifying scream I had ever heard. It was a sound filled with such rage, pain, and hunger that it chilled me to the bone. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the creature turned and disappeared back into the depths of the woods. Shaken, I stood up, my resolve fortified by the need to understand what had just happened. I cautiously made my way to the door, ready to step outside and examine the remains of the plush chicken. But as I opened the door, I froze. There, on my doorstep, stood Mr. Henderson, the shopkeeper. His arrival was so unexpected, so bizarrely timed, that for a moment, I couldn't form any words. His expression was grave, a stark contrast to the quirky, eccentric demeanor I was used to. In his eyes, I saw a seriousness that told me he knew more about what was happening than I had realized. My mind raced with questions, but the most pressing one was clear: what did Mr. Henderson know about the creature that was haunting my farm? As I stood there, bewildered by Mr. Henderson's sudden appearance, he greeted me with a single, chilling word: Wendigo. Wendy what? I blurted out, my brain struggling to process the term amidst the shock and confusion. Mr. Henderson sighed, a patient teacher to my incredulous student. Wendigo, he repeated firmly. It's an ancient creature from Native American folklore, a spirit consumed by hunger. It's said to possess and transform those who indulge in certain unspeakable acts. What you're dealing with is no ordinary predator. It's something far more sinister. With that ominous introduction, he motioned for me to follow him toward the remnants of the chicken coop. I noticed he carried a backpack, which seemed to be bulging with an assortment of peculiar tools and devices, the kind of equipment one doesn't typically find at the local hardware store. As we approached the site, Mr. Henderson pulled out a small flashlight. But instead of the usual white beam, this one emitted a deep, violet light. He swept it across the ground, and to my astonishment, it illuminated a distinct trail on the earth. The trail glistened ominously under the ultraviolet light. That's the creature's blood, Mr. Henderson explained, his voice grave. It's special, visible only under this light. And it means the Wendigo is wounded, not dead. We must act quickly. If it has time to regenerate, it will become even more dangerous. His words sent a shiver down my spine. The idea of this creature, already so powerful and terrifying, becoming stronger was unthinkable. I followed him, my mind racing with fear and disbelief, yet trusting that Mr. Henderson, with his mysterious knowledge and strange tools, might just hold the key to ending this nightmare once and for all. The trail of the Wendigo's blood led us deeper into the forest, a place that had once seemed familiar but now felt like a realm from a twisted fairy tale. The darkness was thick, pierced only by the eerie glow of Mr. Henderson's ultraviolet flashlight. The woods were alive with strange noises, rustling leaves, distant howls, and unidentifiable whispers that seemed to dance on the edge of human hearing. Mr. Henderson, ever the fount of obscure knowledge, provided explanations for each sound we heard. That's just the moaning Mabel, he'd say nonchalantly, or, the whispers of the lost lumberjacks. His tales of local legends and mythical creatures added an unsettling ambience to our already tense expedition. As we navigated through the underbrush, Mr. Henderson began recounting his first encounter with a Wendigo. It was many years ago, he said, his voice taking on a distant quality. I was younger, more reckless. Came face to face with one in these very woods. Nearly lost my right hand to it. He held up his right hand, wiggling his fingers as if to prove their functionality. It's my favorite hand, you know. Good for writing, eating, and swatting pesky mosquitoes. The journey through the dense forest felt endless, my legs growing weary, my mind overwhelmed by the surreal turn my life had taken. Just as I began to wonder whether this was a wild goose chase, Mr. Henderson stopped abruptly. "There," he exclaimed, pointing ahead with his flashlight. The beam fell upon a clearing, revealing a makeshift den nestled against a large, gnarled tree. The air around it felt heavy, charged with a malevolent energy that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "We've found the Wendigo's lair," Mr. Henderson whispered, his voice a mixture of triumph and apprehension. My heart raced as the reality of what we were about to face settled in. This was it, the heart of darkness, the source of the nightmare that had turned my life upside down. With a deep breath, I steeled myself for what was to come, determined to see this through to the end. As we cautiously approached the Wendigo's lair, the forest around us seemed to fall into a deep, unnatural silence. The usual chorus of nocturnal creatures was eerily absent, as if even the bravest of animals dared not make a sound in the presence of such a creature. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, each thud amplifying the tense, suffocating stillness that enveloped us. The lair itself was a crude structure of branches and earth, blending almost seamlessly with the gnarled tree against which it was built. We inched closer, our every step deliberate and muted. Then, within the dim confines of the den, we saw it, the Wendigo. It was huddled, almost curled up, its breathing ragged and labored. Even in its weakened state, it emanated a palpable sense of danger and malevolence. Mr. Henderson's voice was a low whisper, tense with urgency. "Aim for the exposed part of its skull, just above the temple. That's its weak point, only visible when it's injured like this. It's where the spirit that drives it is most vulnerable." My hands were shaking as I raised the shotgun, the duct tape around my hands suddenly feeling more like a shackle than a precaution. I took aim at the creature's head, trying to steady my breathing, to steady my shot. But then, from the shadows of the forest, more eyes appeared, dozens of them, glowing with the same malevolent red light I had seen in the creature before me. A chorus of low, guttural growls filled the air, a sound that seemed to come from all directions. The realization hit me like a physical blow, we were surrounded. The Wendigo wasn't alone, there were more, much more. I heard Mr. Henderson curse under his breath, a rare break in his usually unflappable demeanor. The situation had just gone from dangerous to suicidal. Fear gripped me, a primal, overwhelming terror at the thought of facing not one, but a legion of these nightmarish beings. In that moment, frozen with dread and uncertainty, the forest seemed to close in around us, the darkness teeming with unseen horrors and the chilling gaze of countless Wendigos. Panic set in as I frantically pointed my shotgun at each pair of glowing eyes emerging from the darkness. My mind raced, filled with a sense of impending doom. I started reciting a prayer under my breath, a prayer I hadn't thought of since I was a child. In my heart, I was convinced these were my final moments. The growls of the creatures intensified, creating a cacophony of primal terror. With my heart pounding in my chest, I closed my eyes tightly and pulled the trigger, firing blindly into the unknown. The gunshot echoed through the forest, a desperate cry in the face of overwhelming fear. As I braced for the onslaught, expecting the searing pain of claws and teeth, I felt something entirely unexpected, a series of soft, almost comical pecks at my ankles. Confused, I hesitantly opened my eyes. What I saw was beyond comprehension. There, all around us, were chickens. Not ordinary chickens, but bizarre, Wendigo-like chickens, with glowing red eyes and an eerie presence, yet unmistakably more poultry than predator. As I stood there, shotgun still raised, my body trembled not from cold but from the sheer absurdity of the situation. Around us, the forest had transformed from a den of horrors into a surreal poultry parade. These chickens, if you could still call them that, were an eerie sight, feathers tinged with an otherworldly hue, eyes glowing like demonic coals, and an aura that was both ludicrous and unsettling. In my state of shock, I could hear the rapid, almost rhythmic pecking at my ankles. It was a far cry from the bone-chilling terror of Wendigos tearing into flesh. Instead, here were these bizarre, ghostly chickens, their pecks more annoying than painful, as if they were urging us to pay attention to them. I looked over at Mr. Henderson, expecting some form of guidance or at least an explanation. His face was a picture of bewilderment, his usual air of knowing confidence replaced by an expression that screamed, "I can't believe this is happening." For a man who had always had an answer, a tool, or a story for every supernatural occurrence, this scene seemed to have left him speechless. Ghostly chickens? I asked again, my voice a mixture of incredulity and relief. Is this some kind of poultry poltergeist? Mr. Henderson finally regained his composure, though he still looked as if he was trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. In all my years, he muttered, I've never seen anything quite like this. Wendigos are fearsome, soul-consuming spirits, not this. He gestured helplessly at the clucking, pecking swarm around us. The forest, which had been filled with the menacing growls and snarls of what we believed were Wendigos, was now echoing with the bizarre chorus of these spectral chickens. They fluttered around, some perching on low branches, others strutting boldly between us, their red eyes glinting in the faint moonlight. The fear and tension that had gripped us moments before had dissipated, replaced by a surreal sense of wonder and disbelief. Here we were, in the heart of the forest, surrounded by a flock of ghostly chickens that seemed more curious than threatening. The night's events had taken a turn so strange, so utterly unexpected, that it bordered on the comical. I couldn't help but let out a nervous chuckle, a release of the pent-up fear and adrenaline that had fueled me until now. As the chickens continued their ghostly parade, Mr. Henderson and I exchanged looks, a silent agreement that this was a story no one would believe, a bizarre chapter in the already strange folklore of our little town. In the midst of our bewilderment, the injured Wendigo made a subtle gesture, drawing our attention to a small section of its den. It looked remarkably like a makeshift chicken coop, crudely fashioned from branches and forest debris. It was a startling revelation. The Wendigo wasn't attacking my chickens out of malice or hunger for flesh, it was trying to take a few for itself, attempting to create its own bizarre flock of Wendigo chickens. Mr. Henderson and I exchanged astonished glances, realizing the tragic misunderstanding that had unfolded. The Wendigo, driven by a desire not dissimilar to my own pastoral inclinations, had inadvertently killed my chickens in its attempts to gather them, enraged and confused by the array of gadgets and devices I had set up. Seeing the creature's pain and understanding its intentions, Mr. Henderson rummaged through his backpack and produced a vial containing a remedy for the poison from the plush chicken. He carefully approached the Wendigo, offering the antidote. The creature, surprisingly docile, accepted the treatment, its glowing eyes watching us with an intelligence that was both unsettling and fascinating. Over the next few days, I found myself in the most unlikely of situations, assisting a Wendigo in constructing a more suitable coop for its spectral Wendigo chickens. With Mr. Henderson's guidance, we built a sturdy structure, ensuring it was comfortable and secure for its unusual occupants. The task was bizarre, yet oddly fulfilling, like mending a misunderstanding with a neighbor from another world. In a gesture of gratitude, the Wendigo returned several of my chickens. They were a bit ruffled and, to put it lightly, transformed, but otherwise unharmed. Mr. Henderson, ever the inventor, set about designing a new coop for my farm. This wasn't just any coop, it was equipped with his latest inventions, gadgets specifically tailored to care for these special chickens that had experienced the supernatural. The idea soon struck me: Wendigo chicken eggs. They would be a novelty, something that no one else could offer. With Mr. Henderson's technological expertise and my newfound understanding of these mystical birds, we planned to introduce these unique eggs to the market. The notion was outlandish, yet in a town like ours, where the ordinary mingled with the extraordinary, it felt oddly appropriate. As I looked over the new coop, bustling with both regular and spectral chickens, I couldn't help but marvel at the turn my life had taken. From a simple farmer to a caretaker of the most unusual flock, my days were now filled with the clucking of chickens both seen and unseen, and the occasional, respectful nod to the Wendigo, my unexpected neighbor in the strange tapestry of black feather. Third story. This story was shared by you/Doctoral Wayscared. The Wendigo is near. This is a story which happened to me and my friend a few years back. I work in a national park as a park ranger. When my life was relatively normal, I had just landed a job at a national park. Life was good as I was working with my buddy Rob. The second day was strange. We found bear traps on the ground. We never put them there. Other than that, another day in paradise, but throughout the night, I swear I heard a loud screech coming from the woods near my watchtower. I looked and saw nothing. I just shrugged it off after a little while. As of lately we have been finding small animal corpses around the woods. This is normal since we have bears all over, it's just that these marks were too big to belong to a bear. What's even weirder is we found a tooth inside of a bloody deer. This tooth was too huge and sharp to belong to a bear. I think we have a new animal in these woods. Today we found a bear, hanging from a tree and gutted. I nearly threw up. No animal in the park could do this. Boss told us from now on to stay at the watchtowers. I kept being reassured that everything would be fine, but at this point I just couldn't be too sure anymore. Lately the screeches have been more frequent. I'm having trouble focusing. When I was younger, I was told of a creature that fed off people and animals. It could also mimic voices. It was called a Wendigo. Of course I don't believe in that paranormal crap, but something was taking out animals throughout the park. I swear I heard Rob call me from outside of my watchtower. He yelled, "Hey Trent, you have got to come see this." I nearly left, but I just felt that his voice was off, nearly distorted. I looked out of my watchtower, to see Rob, his insides dangling in the breeze. My boss ruled this out as an accident. That still didn't stop the police from questioning me. I know I heard his voice. I saw something in the woods. Let me explain. This creature I saw had huge antlers, an animal skull as a mask, and it was over 11 feet tall. The night began normally, until the screeches began again. I looked down, only to see this creature, eating my boss's lifeless body. I got a good look at it before it ran off and out of sight. The police have been very suspicious of me lately. How could they not be? Both of the people I worked with are dead. I tried to explain what I saw to the police. Of course nobody believed me. It all led to me being terminated. I've decided I'm not going to let this creature ruin my life. I have done research on this, Wendigo. I plan to break into the park tonight. I will end this, I must. I'm in the park, I hear the screeches and I am following them. I hear the voices of my boss and Rob. They are telling me that they are okay and I should come meet them by my watchtower. I know from my research that the Wendigo creature is really good at tricking people. I just kept wandering around the park. I was wondering, until I heard my mother's voice. She died when I was 6. My instincts told me no, but I had missed her so much. Don't worry Mom, I'm coming. Fourth story. This story was shared by you/Fallout Man. Wendigos, are they real? I'm Max, a guy who doesn't buy into all that supernatural jazz. My journey across Canada was a quest for serenity, a break from the chaos of the city. But fate had its own plans. I met Sarah on the road to the nearest town bordering the eerie Canadian forest. She's got this easygoing charm, a natural warmth that makes you feel like you've known her for ages. An artist by passion and an adventurer at heart, she seemed to find magic in every little thing. Our drive was smooth until we decided to take a less traveled shortcut through the woods. Sarah was brimming with enthusiasm, pointing out every scenic spot and sharing quirky tales about the area. Then, as if the woods were playing a prank on us, my car decided it needed a break. With a splutter and a groan, it called it quits right in the middle of nowhere. Sarah handled the situation with her trademark grace, cracking jokes about forest spirits playing car pranks. Her laughter was a comforting melody amidst the encroaching dusk, especially as the sun dipped, casting strange shadows in the woods. I guess we're camping here tonight, I said, trying to sound cool, but my mind was racing, recalling those spine-tingling stories about these woods. Looks like an impromptu forest sleepover, Sarah quipped, her eyes twinkling with adventure. As twilight descended upon us, a mix of apprehension and curiosity settled in. Little did I know, that night in the woods was just the beginning of an extraordinary and unpredictable escapade. As the night wore on, the forest seemed to come alive in ways I couldn't comprehend. Sarah and I sat close, huddled by the dim light cast by the car, our minds grappling with the inexplicable silence that enveloped us. I've heard tales about these woods, Sarah began softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Whispers of ancient spirits, Wendigos lurking in the shadows, hungry for lost souls. My skepticism battled with a growing sense of unease. You don't really believe in that stuff, do you? I questioned, my voice tinged with a hint of disbelief. Sarah's gaze turned distant, as if she was peering into a realm beyond our understanding. There are things in this world, Max, things that defy logic and reason. Stories passed down through generations often carry fragments of truth, she murmured, her words hanging heavy in the still night air. The forest remained shrouded in an eerie quietude, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. I strained my ears, trying to decipher the cryptic language of the woods. Then, a chilling sound echoed through the night, a haunting, indescribable howl that seemed to emanate from the heart of the forest. Sarah's grip on my hand tightened, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and uncertainty. Tell me that's just an animal, I whispered, my voice betraying a trace of dread. But Sarah remained silent, her gaze fixed on the darkness beyond our refuge. It was as though the forest itself held its breath, acknowledging the presence of something otherworldly. As the night wore on, sleep eluded us, the air thick with anticipation and an unspoken understanding that we were not alone in these woods. The paranormal tales I once scoffed at now hovered at the edge of my consciousness, leaving me to grapple with the inexplicable and the unknown. The night stretched endlessly, an unyielding embrace of mystery and foreboding. Little did I know, the secrets these woods held were far more profound and unsettling than anything I had ever imagined. Nightfall enveloped us, every shadow seemed to harbor a secret, and each whisper of the wind fueled the tension that had settled between Sarah and me. We stayed alert, our senses heightened, listening to every crack and rustle in our surroundings. Suddenly, a sound shattered the stillness. A branch snapping. We exchanged concerned glances, our hearts pounding in unison in the darkness. Fears of the unknown hijacked our imaginations. Then, emerging from the shadows, a figure appeared. With cautious steps, it drew nearer to us. The atmosphere became stifling, filled with an expectant silence. As it approached, the moonlight revealed its identity, a dog. Not just any dog, it wore a handmade collar woven with tiny bones, emitting an unsettling yet intriguing aura. That's the dog I saw on the wanted posters in the town, murmured Sarah, her voice a mix of relief and surprise. The canine drew closer, its eyes expressing gratitude and a peculiar kind of camaraderie, as if it knew us somehow. Despite the eerie collar, its gaze conveyed a sense of calmness, as if reassuring us that we were safe. The tension gradually dissipated as the dog settled by our feet, seeking refuge and protection. Though its initial presence had enshrouded us in mysterious suspense, we now felt a sense of relief, realizing that perhaps the only being lurking in these woods was this faithful companion. We stood there, in the stillness of the night, the dog at our side, gazing at the stars as uncertainty gave way to a sense of connection with this creature who, somehow, had found its way to us amidst the darkness. With the dog nestled by our side, a calm settled over us. Sarah and I found ourselves drawn into a conversation that delved beyond the surface, revealing aspects of ourselves we hadn't shared before. "You strike me as someone who loves a good challenge," Sarah remarked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between us. I chuckled softly. Guilty as charged. I tend to dive headfirst into things, seeking that thrill of the unknown. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. I've always been drawn to art, to stories that breathe life into the mundane. They help me see beyond what's visible, finding beauty in the unnoticed. Her words resonated with me, drawing a parallel to my own quest for the extraordinary. I get that, I replied. Sometimes, the world's magic lies in the smallest details, the stories waiting to be told. As our conversation meandered through our passions and quirks, the tension of the night seemed to dissipate, replaced by a genuine connection. We shared stories of childhood adventures, dreams we harbored, and fears we kept hidden. "So, what brings you to these parts?" I finally asked, curiosity nudging me to uncover more about her. Sarah smiled softly. "I seek inspiration in the unexplored. There's an energy here, a mystique that whispers tales waiting to be painted." Her words stirred something within me, a longing for a deeper connection with the world around me. "I guess we're not that different," I admitted. I embarked on this journey to find a piece of myself I felt was missing. As the night wore on, our conversation flowed effortlessly, each revelation strengthening the bond between us. With the dog as our silent companion, we found solace in the shared tales of our lives, unveiling layers of our personalities under the starlit sky. The night wrapped us in an eerie calmness. Sarah and I were engrossed in our conversation when the forest fell into an unsettling stillness. I shivered, an inexplicable unease settling in my bones. You know, when a forest goes silent, it's rarely a good sign, I muttered, an involuntary chill creeping down my spine. It was a truth I'd learned in my wilderness treks, a silence like this hinted at lurking danger. Before Sarah could respond, a deafening, inhuman cry pierced the silence. The dog bolted, its fur bristling as it dashed towards the source of the sound, disappearing into the dense woods. What in the world was that? Sarah gasped, her eyes wide with alarm. Maybe an elk or something else, I replied, trying to mask my own unease with rationality. But deep down, I knew that sound didn't belong to any forest creature I'd ever encountered. Instinct kicked in, adrenaline surging through me as we chased after the dog, our footsteps pounding against the forest floor. The darkness seemed to swallow us whole as we ventured deeper into the woods. Each step echoed with an unspoken fear, the rustling leaves and cracking branches around us a haunting symphony. Where did he go? Sarah's voice trembled, panic lacing her words. I don't know, but we need to find him, I urged, my heart racing with a mix of worry and foreboding. As we pushed deeper into the forest's heart, an ominous realization gripped us. Something beyond the ordinary lurked within these woods. We plunged deeper into the darkened woods, our frantic calls for the dog met with a haunting silence. The air hung heavy with tension, every step echoing our growing apprehension. Then, amidst the oppressive silence, a thunderous rhythm of galloping footsteps thundered toward us. Panic surged through me, primal instincts kicking in. Run! I shouted to Sarah, the urgency in my voice betraying the fear clawing at my insides. Our feet pounded against the forest floor, a cacophony of terror-fueled steps. The thundering sound seemed to gain on us, getting closer with each passing moment. But in that panicked sprint, I stumbled, my foot catching on a protruding root. I pitched forward, the ground rushing up to meet me. A sickening crack echoed through the woods as my head connected with an unforgiving rock, and darkness enveloped me. The last thing I remember is a flurry of movement, Sarah's voice calling out my name in desperation, and the thundering gallops fading into an ominous silence as everything went black. A faint, distant murmur pulled me from the abyss of unconsciousness. My eyes blinked open to a world draped in shadowy hues. Panic surged as I sat up, the dry crust of blood on my forehead sending shivers down my spine. The forest lay before me, desolate and eerily silent. Sarah. I called out, my voice barely a whisper in the vastness of the woods. No response. No signs of the faithful canine companion either. A feeble light filtered through the dense canopy, casting a muted glow. Had dawn broken? No, it hadn't. I realized with a sinking feeling that I'd been unconscious for almost a day. Hours remained until the onset of another night, another cycle of darkness. Fumbling to my feet, a disorienting wave of dizziness swept over me. The world spun as I steadied myself against a nearby tree, a pounding headache pulsating in tandem with my racing heart. I frantically searched for any signs of Sarah, any clue about what had transpired in my absence. But the woods held on to their secrets, whispering nothing but an ominous quietude. Gritting my teeth against the fear threatening to overwhelm me, I knew I had to find her, find some semblance of answers before the shroud of night descended once more. The forest stood poised in a liminal state, caught between the fading remnants of the night and the impending darkness. And in this eerie in-between, I stood alone, with the chilling realization that the mysteries of these woods had only just begun to unfold. Staggering through the silent woods, I felt the weight of impending darkness bearing down on me. The hours had slipped away, leaving behind an ominous hush that settled over the trees like a heavy shroud. I stumbled forward, each step an arduous effort as I fought against both physical and emotional exhaustion. Fear and a desperate need to find Sarah surged within me, propelling me deeper into the heart of the woods. Then, amidst the suffocating quietude, a distant echo caught my attention. A soft whimper, almost imperceptible. My heart skipped a beat. Was it the dog? Could it be Sarah? Driven by hope, I followed the sound, branches clawing at me as I pushed through the dense underbrush. The fleeting light dimmed further, a foreboding chill seeping into the air. As I advanced, the faint glimmer of the moon illuminated a figure lying on the forest floor. Relief washed over me as I recognized Sarah's silhouette, curled up beneath the canopy of trees. "Sarah!" I called out, my voice trembling with a mix of worry and relief. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open, but something seemed amiss. "Max? What happened?" Her voice was weak, tinged with confusion. I knelt beside her, my heart pounding with a whirlwind of emotions. "I don't know. We got separated, I fell and then I woke up alone." A fleeting sense of safety washed over us, finding solace in each other's presence in the heart of this enigmatic forest. Yet, as the last traces of light faded from the sky, the encroaching darkness whispered of untold dangers, reminding us that the night held secrets we were yet to uncover. The chill of the night wrapped around us, a constant reminder of the lurking mysteries in these woods. Sarah and I huddled together, seeking warmth and reassurance amidst the encroaching darkness. But as the night wore on, a persistent unease settled within me, a gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. A sharp pang sliced through my temples, a sudden, intense pain seizing my senses. I winced, gripping my head, trying to ward off the crippling ache. It felt as though my skull was splitting apart, a relentless assault on my senses. I collapsed to the forest floor, the pain overwhelming any coherent thought. Darkness encroached at the edges of my vision, threatening to pull me under. With a desperate gasp, I fought against the encroaching unconsciousness. When I finally awoke, it was to a world cloaked in the eerie glow of midnight. Confusion clouded my mind as I tried to piece together the events. But as awareness flooded back, a stark realization struck me with chilling clarity: I wasn't with Sarah. Instead, the loyal canine companion lay beside me, its gentle eyes peering at me with a mix of concern and familiarity. Panic surged through me as I struggled to comprehend the twisted reality. My mind had played a cruel trick, conjuring a false narrative amidst the chaos of the head injury. I had mistaken the dog for Sarah in my delirium. Frantic and disoriented, I called out for Sarah, the echoes of my voice swallowed by the silent expanse of the woods. But there was no response, no trace of her amidst the shadows that stretched across the forest floor. Reality crashed down upon me like a relentless wave. The impact had not only disoriented me physically but had shattered the fragile illusion of safety and companionship in this desolate place. I was alone, lost in a realm of uncertainty and unforeseen dangers. Gathering my scattered thoughts, I tried to retrace my steps, to make sense of the fragmented memories and the ominous events that had unfolded. The dog stayed by my side, a silent companion offering solace in the midst of confusion. With a heavy heart, I embarked on a solitary journey through the haunting woods, each step a reminder of the tangled web of mysteries that awaited me. The night whispered secrets I was yet to decipher, and the shadows concealed truths that eluded my grasp. As the moon cast its silvery glow upon the landscape, I pressed forward, driven by a relentless determination to unravel the enigma that had entangled me in this surreal and treacherous journey. The clearing in the forest appeared suspended in a perpetual state of desolation. Life had withered away, leaving behind a landscape of wilted vegetation and an eerie silence. My steps echoed in the emptiness, breaking the ominous quietness that enveloped the place. Small scattered skeletons and the complete absence of any animal life painted a disconcerting picture, one that evoked a deep sense of fear within me. My gaze fixated on the cave that stood in the distance, a dark opening that seemed to be the epicenter of this desolation. A cold, damp draft escaped its mouth, like a mysterious whisper calling me toward its interior. My mind grappled between curiosity and the instinctual warning that this place wasn't safe. What secrets or dangers lay hidden within that cavernous darkness? My heart pounded, uncertainty clouding my thoughts. The dog, my silent companion in this surreal journey, remained by my side, its eyes filled with loyalty and an uncanny animal wisdom. Its presence seemed to offer a sliver of courage amidst the darkness. The mystery shrouding the cave was palpable, an enigmatic invitation tempting my curiosity and challenging my prudence. Was it wise to venture into the jaws of the unknown? I couldn't ignore the sense of danger that clung to my intuition. Time hung suspended in a moment of hesitation, my mind weighing the possibilities while my instincts urged caution. Night was looming, its shadows slowly encroaching upon the clearing, a subtle warning that time was running short. Then, a decision solidified within me, fueled by the need for answers and the will to confront whatever awaited in the darkness. With cautious steps, I approached the cave's entrance, every fiber of my being alert to any hint of danger. The dog emitted a soft growl, its gaze fixed on the cave's mouth, as if trying to warn me of something invisible to my eyes. Its gesture reignited my unease, but an indomitable impulse pushed me forward. With a deep breath, I crossed the threshold of the cave, plunging into the darkness that devoured the light. The air grew denser, laden with an earthy and mysterious aroma, as if it were imbued with centuries of secrets held within the earth's depths. The echo of my footsteps reverberated against the rocky walls, my hands feeling the cold contours of the cave, searching for any clue that might guide me. The darkness was overwhelming, but a glimmer of determination burned within me, propelling me forward in search of answers. Each step was a challenge, an internal struggle between the desire to uncover the truth and the terror of the unknown. The cave seemed like an endless maze, its secrets hidden in the shadows, waiting to be unraveled or forever guarded by the veil of mystery. The dog remained by my side, its comforting presence amidst the dimness. Its animal senses seemed alert, its eyes scanning the surroundings as if anticipating some hidden danger in the darkness. A distant whisper echoed in the cavern, a barely perceptible murmur that enveloped my senses with a sense of unease. Was the cave witness to an ancient secret, or was it the dwelling place of something more sinister? Time blurred in the darkness, each minute feeling like an eternity as I ventured deeper into the cavern's depths. More and more, the sense of intrigue mingled with the palpable fear that stirred in the rarefied air. Amidst the blackness, a revelation materialized. The challenge of the cave lay not only in its nooks and passageways but in the enigmas and dangers that lurked, concealed within, challenging my courage and sanity. As I ventured deeper into the cavern, shadows danced ominously on the walls, amplifying the eerie silence that enveloped the space. The air grew heavier, thick with an unidentifiable scent that sent shivers down my spine. Then, in the dimness, shapes began to emerge, bodies strewn across the cave floor, a macabre sight that froze the blood in my veins. My heart sank at the grim reality of death that surrounded me. Amidst the lifeless forms, a sense of dread gripped me as I noticed Sarah lying unconscious but miraculously alive among the corpses. With urgency coursing through my veins, I hurried toward her, intent on rescuing her from this haunting place. But as I approached, the dog, sensing something amiss, grew restless, its bark piercing the oppressive silence of the cave. Before I could reach Sarah, a bone-chilling presence filled the cavern, an entity that defied the laws of nature and reason. The Wendigo, towering over 2 meters tall, its form contorted and unsettling, staggered into the cave, its very presence a manifestation of primal terror. I retreated, seeking cover among the lifeless bodies and foliage, my breath hitching in fear. The Wendigo's ominous aura seemed to suffocate the air, its looming figure casting a malevolent shadow over the scene. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched in horror, hidden from view, as the monstrous entity approached the dog, its movements predatory and menacing. The poor creature's barks turned to whimpers, a futile attempt at warding off the inevitable. With a single, brutal strike, the Wendigo ended the dog's life, a sight that pierced through my soul like a dagger. I clenched my teeth to stifle a cry, a wave of helplessness washing over me as the creature began to feed on the life it had just extinguished. Terror rooted me to the spot, my body trembling as I bore witness to the gruesome spectacle unfolding before my eyes. The Wendigo's insatiable hunger was a harrowing sight, its savagery a stark reminder of the unfathomable horrors lurking within these accursed woods. I prayed for some semblance of escape from this waking nightmare, but the darkness of the cave held me captive, a silent witness to the unspeakable brutality of this unearthly being. The plan had formed in my mind, even amidst the horror unfolding before me. With determination, I approached Sarah, assessing her delicate condition. Her injured leg was a concern, and her unconscious state added a layer of difficulty to our imminent escape. The creature, oblivious to my presence, had retreated from the cave after its grisly meal. I knew I had to act swiftly before it returned in search of more prey. Carefully, I lifted Sarah into my arms, her body light but fragile. Concern for her well-being mingled with the urgency to flee that accursed. If for me, the hope of escaping that inferno beginning to take shape. But every rustle in the forest, every shadow shifting in the darkness, fueled my fear of being discovered by that monstrous being lurking in the shadows. With each step, the urgency grew. The exit was in sight when a shiver ran down my spine, a foreboding sense warning me that the Wendigo was nearing. The sound of crunching branches and a menacing hiss echoed behind me. There was no time to waste. With a superhuman effort, I quickened my pace, dodging the danger and entering the relative safety of the forest. My ragged breaths and the weight of Sarah in my arms combined with the anxiety of escaping that living nightmare. Each inhale, each beat of my heart, was a reminder of the struggle for survival. I ran as fast as I could, seeking refuge and protection for Sarah and myself. The forest seemed conspiratorial, every noise, every shadow, igniting the fear that was engulfing me. Finally, I found a secure hiding spot, far from the cave and beyond the Wendigo's reach. I carefully placed Sarah in a safe location, watching over her with concern while attempting to keep at bay the panic threatening to engulf me. My mind raced, weighing options, seeking a way to get help or find an escape from that torment. But for now, the priority was to ensure we were out of that creature's reach, find assistance, and a path to salvation. Unfortunately, what I've told you isn't my story. While Max and Sarah did exist, well, they existed. I'm just a search and rescue guy tasked with finding these people. As part of the search and rescue team, our priority was locating two missing individuals, Max and Sarah. Their disappearance had us on edge, and our efforts to find them led us deep into an undisclosed and secluded area. Amidst the dense forest, we stumbled upon a discovery that sent shivers down our spines, a weathered notebook. Its contents held a gripping tale, a first-hand account of harrowing encounters with an unknown creature. The details were vivid, the emotions raw, and every entry felt like a real-life experience. As I read through the pages, the story transitioned into a warning. It seemed to convey the inherent danger of the events described, urging extreme caution for anyone daring to venture into that area. The descriptions of the creature were so vivid and haunting that they felt eerily tangible. The authenticity of the notebook's account struck a chord within the team. We couldn't dismiss it as mere fiction. The descriptions were too detailed, too genuine to ignore. The warning it carried felt like a genuine caution against something inexplicable. Our search for Max and Sarah yielded no results, leaving us with more questions than answers. The notebook remained a cryptic piece of the puzzle, hinting at a reality too unfathomable for conventional explanation. As a seasoned member of the search and rescue team, it was a stark reminder of the unforeseen dangers lurking in unexplored territories. We handled the notebook with caution, treating its contents as a solemn warning, a testament to the potential perils of the unknown. And yes, we found that cave, but no one was inside, just rests of that dog and some strange wood sticks figures with some hair, and somehow it was DNA compatible with those people. Don't try to find that place. Fifth story. This story was shared by you/altballsdeep. They burned down an entire forest to cover up something horrible. For my own safety, I will be using fake names for people and locations as I describe my experience. Whistleblowers often end up dead, after all. I used to live in a small town nestled up in the mountains, surrounded by a famous national forest. Let's call this town Greenville. Being born and raised there, I had an affinity and distinct familiarity with the surrounding mountain and its forest. Douglas, a childhood best friend, would accompany me on countless camping and hiking treks through the numerous trails located near our town. Now here's a disturbing fact you may or may not have known: an absurd number of people go missing in national parks and forests every year. A quick Google search will tell you that 1,180 people have gone missing in national parks between 2018 and 2023. That boils down to almost 300 people going missing every year. Why do I bring this up? Well, over a dozen people have gone missing in the national forests around Greenville in the 20-odd years I lived there. And it's a miracle that Douglas and I did not end up being among those numbers. You see, Douglas and I had a few disturbing experiences in that forest over the years. Back in the summer of 1999, we went out with our dads on a camping trip. Being adventurous and reckless kids at the time, Douglas and I snuck off the main trail and got out of sight from our parents. We spent hours playing hide and seek in the woods, looking at strange plants and poking at ant hills. You know, pre-teen boy stuff. Well, we started to panic when it got dark and we couldn't find our way back to the trail. Dad? Where are you? We both cried and called out. Soon the sun had dipped beyond the horizon, blanketing the forest in twilight. Adam, I'm scared, Douglas said, jumping at the sound of an owl hooting in the distance. I took in a deep breath, looking around and thinking of a way to calm my friend down. That's when we heard something ahead of us. It sounded like the footsteps of a large man running across the brush at full sprint. Focusing my attention to the source of the sound, I scanned the tree line and caught a glimpse of a shadow darting between the tree trunks. Whatever made those huge footsteps moved like lightning between the trees, so fast you could blink and miss it. My heart dropped when I realized this shadow creature was zigzagging its way forward, towards where Douglas and I stood. What the hell is that? Douglas asked, his voice cracking in panic. Grabbing his arm, I tugged on him and started running in the opposite direction. I don't know, but we need to get out of here. We ran through the forest, weaving between the trees until my lungs burned from the strain of running. I only looked back once, seeing the creature gaining on us at an alarming rate. For a brief moment, I thought I saw glowing amber eyes attached to the creature's blurry and distorted face. By some miracle, we popped out of the forest and arrived at one of the trail's flashlights were beaming through the tree line further down the trail, and we both sprinted full speed for the lights. At some point, that creature had stopped chasing us. We eventually ran into the people with the flashlights, who happened to be a search party that our dads had rounded up to go looking for us. Needless to say, we were in a lot of trouble and they didn't buy our story of being chased by a shadow monster. The next incident happened on my 21st birthday, back in the fall of 2008. My father took me on a camping trip up in the mountains and brought along a bottle of Jack Daniels to celebrate my legal drinking age. The plan was to set up camp, get drunk but not totally hammered, and maybe hunt some squirrel the next morning with my .22 long rifle. Well, we arrive at the campsite, get everything set up, and all seems to be going normal. That is, until nightfall. I had just downed my third shot of whiskey when a screeching sound wailed out into the cold night air. My dad, who was off relieving himself on a tree just outside the glow of the campfire, laughed in response to the noise. What's the matter, kiddo? Jack on the rock's too strong for ya. He stumbled back over to the campfire, fixing up the zipper on his jeans. I didn't make that sound, I told him. He raised an eyebrow before grinning at me, like he thought I was messing with him. Just when he was about to say something, that screeching sound erupted into the night air once again. It sounded much closer than before. What in the hell? My dad shouted, looking around at the darkness surrounding our campsite. He rushed over to his tent and brought out his old lever-action hunting rifle and my comparably tiny .22 long rifle and tosses me my gun. What was that? I asked, checking my rifle and turning off the safety. He loaded up a round in his gun and brought it up close to his chest, ready to aim. In all the years I knew my old man, I had never seen his eyes so wide and full of alarm. Boy, I don't know, he said, keeping his head on a swivel. Been huntin' out here for years and I ain't never heard an animal make a sound like that. Can't be good. I sat by the campfire, my hands shaking and unable to think of anything to say. Then the sound screeched out a third time, seemingly from somewhere right above me in the tree canopy. Taking me off guard, the screech made me jump back in fear, nearly causing me to soil my pants. If I could describe the sound, it had to be a mixture of a dying coyote and the strained vocal cords of a human child screaming in pain. Well, my dad wasn't having any of it. When he heard that sound booming from right above where I sat, he cursed and took aim with his rifle. The blast temporarily lit up the surrounding woods with the muzzle flash and sent a crack echoing through the wilderness. Following the gunshot, I heard a loud thud on the forest floor, as if something heavier than a grizzly bear had just jumped off the highest tree branch. Heavy footsteps followed, indicating something had broken out into a full sprint heading away from our campsite. We didn't get any sound sleep that night despite having some alcohol in us, and luckily the rest of the trip went by uneventful. The final experience I'll talk about before I reveal the truth is a gruesome one, so if you're squeamish, please be warned. A few years ago, a young woman went missing in the woods around Greenville. She was a local of the town, so everyone had come together to form a search party and look for her. That's just what we were about. A small town was a close-knit community and we looked out for each other. Douglas and I decided to join the search party and we were assigned to comb through the far northeastern section of the woods. We scoured the woods, calling out that woman's name for hours. "Jessica, are you out here?" She never turned up. Eventually, it got late and we had to turn back. Even though we brought flashlights along, the search party advised us not to go too far out at night since it could risk more people getting turned around and lost. Remembering the other chilling experiences I had in the forest at night, I had no problem with that stipulation. Douglas, on the other hand, didn't quite agree and indeed grew irritated that we had to pack up and leave before nightfall. You see, Douglas had a bit of a romantic interest in Jessica, so his motivation to find her ran much deeper than mine. Which is exactly why he stopped when he saw a small cave nestled between the trees on the side of the mountain. This cave wasn't unusual. There were plenty of them all over the mountain hidden within the forest, which made excellent hibernation dens for the local black bears. For that reason, I adamantly protested when Douglas suggested we go looking in the cave for Jessica. "Come on, maybe she took shelter in there. We gotta at least look." He drew closer to the cave, taking out the flashlight and shining it through them all. At this point, twilight had crept in and detouring through a possible bear cave was the last thing I wanted to do. "You wanna go in there, fine. I'll stay out here and wait." I gave him a dead serious look. He scowled and turned to enter the cave, calling me a coward and a few other choice names as he entered. Taking a seat on a nearby rock, I waited and kept the flashlight on, pointed at the cave. It grew darker and my anxiety began to rise. What was only a few minutes had felt more like hours. When the silver glint of the full moon began to peek through the tree canopy, I cursed and turned to face the cave. "Doug, are you done looking around yet?" My voice echoed back from the cave. Just when I thought there wouldn't be a response, I heard my own voice speaking back to me. It said the same exact thing, albeit in a much lower, almost choppy and broken-sounding voice. "Doug, are you done looking around yet?" Frozen in place, I didn't know what to think. I heard my echo, and then the voice of something repeating my words back. I could feel my heart exploding in my chest as I turned to examine the forest around me. While I had my back turned to the cave, I heard Douglas scream. Quickly shining my light back to the entrance, I heard his footsteps crashing on the stone as he raced out of the darkness. His breathing had been elevated to hyperventilating levels, and he spoke incoherent nonsense. "Dude, it's horrible, oh my god, dude." He fell to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably as he dropped the flashlight. "Whoa, calm down, just breathe and tell me what's wrong." He continued crying non-stop, unable to piece together words. I sat there rubbing his back, glancing back up at the cave and wondering what he saw. When his sobbing grew softer, another noise began to grab my attention. It was a wet, uncomfortable, mouth-slapping sound. Think of a big dog chewing on a piece of raw meat. When I realized the sound came from the maw of the cave, I raised my light at the entrance and felt all the blood drain from my body. A tall, humanoid shadow stood inside the cave. Amber eyes locked with mine, and I watched in absolute horror and disgust as long, lanky and inhuman arms ripped flesh straight off of a dismembered human leg. Blood dripped off the severed body part as the creature took the bit of flesh and stuffed it into a mouth I couldn't even make out on its oblong head. Then I heard that wet, deeply uncomfortable chewing noise as that thing ate the raw human flesh. At some point, Douglas must have noticed the creature because he broke out screaming at the top of his lungs. I screamed with him, and we both ran away as fast as our feet would allow. Fortunately, that thing did not follow. I am now convinced that what I saw in that forest was a Wendigo. You see, after all my traumatic experiences, I've grown an affinity to research the paranormal and the unknown. The Wendigo is a creature known for feasting on the flesh of humans, and seems to best fit the description of what I saw in the forest that day. Now, here's an interesting twist. The Wendigo has long been said to have a weakness against fire, silver, and cold weather. The reason I mention this is because the national forest around Greenville suffered a catastrophic wildfire back in 2021. Since then, disappearances in the area have stopped. But there's more. In my last year of living in Greenville, just weeks before the fire, a group of strange people arrived at our town. They drove all black cars with government license plates. At the time, I was working as a volunteer for the park ranger services. These strange people came to the park ranger office, asked a few questions to my boss, and disappeared off into the woods for hours before coming back and just abruptly leaving. 6 days later, the forest fire that would devastate Greenville and the surrounding mountain would begin. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I firmly believe that the government stepped into a Wendigo crisis unfolding around Greenville. And their solution was to burn it all down. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to our channel Horror in Detail. Drop your opinions/suggestions in the comments section, and like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm.